In the verdant town of Calamba, nestled by the shimmering Laguna de Bay, the story of a national hero begins. José Protasio Rizal Mercado y Alonso Realonda was born on June 19, 1861, into a world brimming with both natural beauty and quiet injustice. He was the seventh of 11 children, a blessing to his parents, Francisco Mercado Teodora Alonso. His family was well-to-do, part of the Principalia class, which afforded them a life of comfort and learning that was rare for Filipinos at the time. This comfortable beginning, however, did not shield the young Pepe from the realities of Spanish colonial rule. He saw the world with observant eyes, noticing the subtle and not-so-subtle ways his people were treated as inferiors in their own land. His mother, Doña Teodora, was his first and most influential teacher. She was a woman of remarkable intellect and culture, possessing a knowledge of literature and mathematics that was uncommon for women of her era. It was she who first opened the world of books to him, teaching him to read at an astonishingly young age. She would read to him in Spanish, stories that fired his imagination and planted the seeds of curiosity. One of the most famous stories she shared was that of the foolish moth that flew too close to the flame. While his mother intended it as a cautionary tale, the young Rizal saw the noble sacrifice of dying for one's ideals, for the light. This early lesson would echo throughout his life. The world outside his home was his second classroom. Leaving the familiar comforts of Calamba, Rizal's journey of intellectual awakening took him to the bustling capital of Manila. He enrolled at the Ateneo Municipal, a prestigious Jesuit school. Here, the world of knowledge opened up to him. The Jesuits' rigorous, systematic education recognized his prodigious talent. Rizal thrived in this environment. He consistently earned the highest honors, the emperor of his class. He wrote poetry. He carved sculptures. He engaged in spirited debates. He absorbed philosophy, the natural sciences, literature, and history. The Ateneo years shaped him into a polished intellectual with a profound sense of purpose. After graduating with highest honors, he went to the University of Santo Tomas. He first studied philosophy and letters, later shifting to medicine to help his mother's failing eyesight. UST felt starkly different from Ateneo. He encountered the friars' suffocating grip and blatant discrimination against Filipino students. He felt the system stifled critical thinking. This only strengthened his conviction. True education could not flourish under colonial oppression. Convinced he could not attain the knowledge he craved at home, Rizal left for Europe. In 1882, with Paciano's secret blessing, he sailed for Spain, his departure shrouded in secrecy. He arrived in Barcelona, then Madrid, enrolling at the Universidad Central. He pursued medicine and philosophy and letters. He lived frugally, devouring history, politics, and languages. In Spain he found a freedom he had never known, to speak, to debate, to criticize abuses. He joined the Círculo Hispano-Filipino, a leading voice for reform. He praised Filipino genius and condemned brute force that sought to suppress it. In Paris he specialized in ophthalmology under Dr. Louis de Wecker. He traveled to Germany, Heidelberg, then Berlin, impressed by scientific discipline and intellectual rigor, and a strong sense of national pride. He befriended Ferdinand Blumentritt. Their correspondence became a rich exchange of ideas. He saw nations built on education, liberty, and shared identity. He realized his country's backwardness came from oppressive colonial policy. He armed himself not with weapons, but with reason, science, and historical consciousness. He became a physician diagnosing the social cancer consuming his fatherland. In 1887, while in Berlin, he completed his first novel, Noli Me Tangere, Touch Me Not, a searing exposé of a society under Spanish rule. Through Ibarra, Maria Clara, and Elias, Rizal laid bare the arrogance of friars, the corruption of officials, and the complicity of the elite. It was a mirror held up to a sick society. The publication sent shockwaves across the islands and the colonial world. The friars and authorities banned it, branding its author subversive. But copies were smuggled, passed hand to hand, read by candlelight. For the first time, Filipinos saw their suffering, aspirations, and identity articulated. The novel awakened a national consciousness. Undeterred by threats and persecution of his family, Rizal began his second novel, El Filibusterismo, The Reign of Greed. Published in 1891, was darker and more revolutionary. The hopeful reformist Ibarra becomes the vengeful Simoon. Rizal explored the limits of peaceful reform and the lure of armed struggle. The novel posed a grim choice: endless suffering or bloody revolt. It warned Spain, without reform, a catastrophic revolution was inevitable. Together, the novels diagnosed the social cancer and forecast its outcomes. They were not calls to arms, but calls to awakening. Enlightenment before liberation. His pen proved more powerful than any sword, piercing conscience and igniting revolution. He educated his people, exposed truth, and laid foundations for a nation. Rizal's travels were not sightseeing, they were essential to his intellectual and political project. After the Noli, he returned briefly in 1887, but uproar forced him to leave after 6 months. He journeyed to Hong Kong, Japan, and the United States, before settling in London, poring over texts about his homeland. There he discovered Morga's 1609 Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas. It described a vibrant, literate, prosperous pre-colonial society, with its laws, culture, and trade networks. Rizal painstakingly annotated Morga, publishing his edition in 1890 to give Filipinos back their history. By reclaiming their past, he sought to restore self-respect and confidence to shape the future. His travels continued. Paris, Brussels, Madrid. He led the propaganda movement. Writing for La Solidaridad, he deconstructed colonial myths, arguing indolence was a response to exploitation, and predicting independence without reform. The work took a toll: hardship and fatigue. Political infighting strained the movement as news from home darkened his thoughts. Yet his ideas evolved. The struggle was not only against Spain, but against disunity, lack of education, and political immaturity. His vision expanded from reforms to nation-building. True independence demanded moral and intellectual redemption. Despite warnings, Rizal returned in 1892, believing the fight was among his people. He founded La Liga Filipina, peaceful, reformist, yet was arrested and exiled to Dapitan without proper trial. 4 years in exile could have crushed him. Instead, he transformed exile into service: physician, teacher, engineer, scientist, farmer, inventor. Patients came from far and wide, specimens sailed to Europe. He built water systems, carved maps, and formed minds and character. Freedom for a retraction, he refused. In Dapitan, he met Josephine Bracken, companion of his final years. Monitored by guards, yet respected by the people, he remained unbroken. In 1896, the revolution broke out, inspired in part by his writings. Though bound for Cuba as a doctor, he was seized, returned, and imprisoned. Accused of rebellion and sedition, his sham trial sealed his fate. In his final days, he wrote with peace and acceptance, Mi ultimo adios, his last farewell. On December 30th, 1896, he walked calmly to the field of martyrs. He checked his pulse, faced death with composure. Shots rang out, and he fell toward the rising sun. He fulfilled the moth's destiny, sacrificing himself for the light of freedom. Martyrdom transformed him into the soul of a nation, hero not by sword, but by mind and heart. His legacy is more than independence. It is the idea of a Filipino nation.